Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is wrap. Let's take a look at some of the definitions or the ways that we use this verb. The first way you're likely to hear wrap used is to mean to cover or enclose someone or something in paper or a soft material. So with this first definition, you might think about having a gift, a present of some kind, right? And taking paper and covering it so that someone has something to open, so that the gift is a bit of a surprise. Right? So that's one way to use that verb, but we can wrap ourselves in blankets to stay warm or other soft material. That's kind of the focus of this first definition. A second way you might hear the verb wrap used is to mean to clasp or embrace someone. Sometimes as we're telling stories, you might hear or read about a character wrapping their arms around someone. Or could be another part of their body as well. But that's that idea of kind of clasping or embracing. So sometimes this verb will be used in connection to hugs. A third way you'll hear the verb wrap used is to mean to be carried over the next line or fit around a picture. So this third definition is very specific to computers and computer software. So sometimes, maybe if you're using a program like Microsoft Excel and you're typing several words, the words might go into the next cell or little box. Right? But if you want the words to just stay in one, there's actually a function called wrap. And so here you're kind of pushing the words or the characters into the next line, and that's generally going to make that box larger in size. So that's, again, very specific to computers, and you can use this in a variety of different software as well. So not just Excel, but that was the first example that came to my mind. You might also see it with graphics and how we want text to fit either around or under and in connection to a picture. A fourth way you might hear the verb wrap used is very specific to filming or recording. And so when we finish that process of filming or recording something, they'll talk about wrapping production. So finishing the process of saving this material for the future. Now, I want to note, as I keep saying this verb wrap, right? Your mind might have gone to another place in connection with music. So you might be thinking RAP. That's going to be saved maybe for a future video. So very different. Here we're focused on WRAP. Okay, and you should know that WRAP, wrap, is a regular verb. To make the progressive form of this verb, you want to double the ending P because we have a one-syllable verb that ends with consonant, vowel, consonant, right? So I'm going to add a second P before I add ing. That forms wrapping. The past tense and participle forms of this verb are going to be made in a similar way. I've got to double the ending P before I add ed. Now my base verb, wrap, ends in this unvoiced P sound. This means that when I add the ed ending, I'm going to make a T sound. And I don't add an extra syllable as I say that past tense or ed ending. So the past tense form of the verb should sound like this: wrapped, wrapped. Okay. Now there are actually a number of phrasal verbs with wrap, so we're going to focus the majority of today's video on a discussion of those phrasal verbs and their meanings. The first phrasal verb we'll discuss today is to wrap around. This can have several different meanings. We're going to talk about three. The first way you'll hear wrap around used is to mean to cover something with clothing. So an example of this might be wrap a scarf around your neck. Okay. Here's an imperative sentence, a command. This might be a sentence a parent uses with their child when they want their child to stay warm outside, right? So kind of talking about bundling up, covering, in this case, our neck with a scarf. A second way you'll hear wrap around used, though, is to cover or encircle with a part of your body. An example of this. The toddler wrapped his arms and legs around his dad's leg and started to cry. So here, maybe we can kind of picture a small child, right, taking arms and legs around the leg of his father, his dad here. Maybe he doesn't want his dad to leave, right? So he's kind of attached himself. He's encircling his body around his father's leg. This sentence, the toddler wrapped his arms and legs, this would be an example of the simple past tense. Okay. Let's look at a third way to use wrap around. You might hear this used to talk about a crash, an auto accident. So it's where one vehicle crashes into a stationary object, so something that is not moving. Okay. So we're not going to use wrap around if we're talking about two cars or two vehicles hitting each other, because those are moving objects in most instances. So instead, let's look at an example sentence. He wrapped his car around the traffic light last night. Okay, so we can kind of picture traffic light, long pole with red light, yellow light, green light, right? And someone hitting that stationary object. He wrapped his car around is another example of the simple past tense. Let's move to another phrasal verb. The next one we'll discuss is to wrap in. This is used many times to talk about enveloping or enclosing something in another material. And that other material is what's going to come after, okay, our preposition in. Here's an example sentence. They will wrap the shrimp in bacon and bake it for 20 minutes. Okay. Here's a simple future sentence, right? And we might encounter this verb wrap in cooking directions or in descriptions of different dishes. So we can kind of picture, we have a piece of shrimp, right? And we're going to envelop or enclose it in bacon. The next phrasal verb we'll discuss is to wrap up. This is going to have a couple different meanings. One of our meanings is on this first screen, and that is just to cover. And this could be covering with many different types of material or things. So an example of this. Have you wrapped up the presents? Okay. That's an example of a present perfect yes or no question. There. And I want to note, sometimes we hear people say wrap up, but it would have also been okay here not to use a phrasal verb and just say, have you wrapped the presents yet? It would have about the same meaning. It ties back to that first definition. So the wrap up sometimes seems a little bit extra when it just means to cover something and something else. Now, a second way you might hear wrap up used is to mean to finish or to bring something to a conclusion. An example of this. When are you going to wrap up work today? Right? So I know this is a question I've used a lot as both my husband and I have worked from home. Sometimes it feels like our work days might not end just because we don't change places or locations. We're in front of our computer a lot. When are you going to wrap up is a question for the simple future. So I'm asking someone about their plan. The last phrasal verb we're going to discuss today is to wrap up in. Okay. Now, this can also have a number of different meanings. We'll talk about 3 of them today. The first way to use wrap up in is to mean to be completely absorbed in something, right? So really into something, maybe not thinking about other things. An example of this might be, she was wrapped up in her book, so she didn't hear the doorbell. Okay. So here, right, this person is maybe so interested in their story, so interested what's going to have to happen next, right? The woman, in this case, doesn't hear the doorbell ringing. Okay. Was wrapped up In is an example of passive voice. So this is going to be simple past tense, but in the passive voice. Another way you'll hear wrap up in is just to mean to be involved in something. Participating might be another way to think of it. An example of this: was he wrapped up in the criminal enterprise? Okay. So here we're asking, was he involved? Was he participating in this criminal activity? That's another example of passive voice. Lastly, we can use wrap up in to go back to that meaning of enveloping or enclosing someone in something. An example of this: wrap up in a blanket and go lie on the couch. Okay. So here's another imperative, a command. I feel like this is something I heard when I was little and sick. To maybe feel a little bit better, my mom might encourage me to get a blanket, right, and enclose myself, put that blanket around me in this case, and then lie down on the couch. Okay. Now, let's spend a few moments looking at some words and phrases related to our verb wrap. Okay. And the first word we're going to look at is just the noun form of this word. The noun form can have several different meanings, just like our verb. But first, I want to note wrap as a noun has the exact same spelling and the exact same pronunciation as our verb. And the first way you might hear wrap used is to refer to kind of a loose garment. Generally, it's an outer garment, so something that covers other clothing. And I thought it might be helpful to have a picture. So if you look down at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, I've got a woman here in kind of a brown and tannish wrap. Okay. And you might hear a sentence like this with that noun: you should bring a wrap, it may get cold. Right? So here someone's giving advice about what to wear for a particular event or a particular outing. Now, a second way wrap gets used as a noun is to refer to any type of paper or other kind of soft material, and that material is being used for the purpose of covering something else. An example of that meaning in a sentence might be, use the plastic wrap for the leftovers. Right? So this is a product intentionally designed to cover, many times, leftovers. Right? A third way you might hear wrap is, and actually I should say see, you might see it on a menu. So this is generally describing kind of a type of sandwich. Generally, a wrap has been rolled, and it's not usually using bread, but what we might use or call a tortilla. So again, I've got a picture here to help us understand what it is I'm describing. And you might hear somebody say something like, this restaurant has great wraps. Right? And so they're specifically talking about a particular type of food. And inside that, goodness, it could be anything: vegetables, meats, cheeses, you name it. Okay? The fourth way you might hear wrap used as a noun is to refer to the end of a filming or recording session. So I think sometimes as I've watched movies and TV shows that are about that process of recording, you might hear somebody at the end of things say something like, that's a wrap. Right? It's really kind of another way to say we're done. We've finished recording, or we've finished filming. Now, another related word you might encounter is the noun wrapper. This generally refers to any kind of piece of paper, plastic, or other covering that exists for the purpose of protecting something. An example of this in a sentence might be, pick up these candy wrappers. Right? So many times these are pieces of plastic or kind of combination material that protects candy until we're ready to eat it. The last thing we're going to look at today is the phrase under wraps. So when people use this phrase, they're generally talking about something secretive, right? So there's kind of we'd say a veil of secrecy about something. An example of how you might hear this used in a sentence would be, their newest product is under wraps. So sentences implying the public, people outside the organization, they don't know what this new product is. It's being kind of kept quiet. It's being kept a secret. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.